And welcome back to GBS Morning Extra. If you're just joining us, you're getting us live from our studios here in Nairobi. And as I promised earlier before the break, today we're going to look at mostly the economic effect that the coronavirus has dealt to the country. But then we know that this is a global pandemic and it has affected almost everybody, 100 plus countries around the globe. And this indeed is not a small thing, if I may say that. Yesterday, we saw the president come out and outline some measures that his administration is putting into place to try and curb this disease. And also, the president also was very categorical in his announcements and outlined some measures, and mostly financial measures. But you'll understand and you'll remember that before this, the Cabinet Secretary for Health the other day came out and announced also some measures. And one of the measures that the government has always been trying to push across is that let us stay at home. And, you know, if you have any relative or any friend or yourself travel in from the country, from another country that is, then it is most important that you get tested first and then self-quarantine. And I would say that this hasn't really augured well with many people. And Kenyans just seem to have their own way of reacting to such measures. But we saw also the president himself in his address yesterday and the CS the day before yesterday actually using a term many would want to forgive me for repeating that. Kenyans are indisciplined, and he said that this indiscipline is going to cost us our lives. Now, today I'm joined here in studio by a man you know very well, Satchu, the CEO of Rich Management. He's going to talk to us onto some aspects of the economic aspect. But then before we start that, Ali Khan, welcome to the show, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation on GBS Morning Extra.
It's a pleasure. Good to be with you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, maybe if we just begin, yourself, are you moving around? Are you staying at home?
I'm staying at home. I stopped moving around about 4 or 5 days ago. And I'm just working from home. I'm trying to practice a little bit of social distancing and just be a little bit more prudent in the way I'm handling myself.
Well, that's very encouraging to hear. But then maybe you can just outline to us, your view and what you think about how we as Kenyans are handling the whole situation. Yes, the government is announcing about measures that it wants to, put into place. But then if Kenyans do not reciprocate, if Kenyans do not follow through the discussion that the government is trying to put across, then what are we looking at as a country?
So firstly, if I can share with your viewers, I think this is a once in a century battle. Its transmissiveness is off the charts. So just to give you an example, if you catch the flu, you can give the flu to about 4 people, 5 people in 10 communications. Here with this, you can give it to 53,000 people. So what we're talking about is something that can spread like wildfire. And we're seeing that in many countries around the world,
sure.
In China, Italy. And of course, for quite a time, everyone thought we were not going to see it in Africa. But what we have is the tip of an iceberg in Africa. If you're seeing numbers that are telling you 20, my estimate is the real number is 50 to 100 times higher than that number.
Oh.
Because not everybody is being identified and tested.
Yes.
And what is also clear from what I can see is it's already transmitting within Kenya. So when we say the 25 number, I think is the latest number, make no mistake, it's considerably higher than that. So it is here, we have to deal with it. Now, if I look at, so the first point is it's a medical thing. can't inoculate yourself with a rate cut, a tax cut. This is not going to work. This is the challenge of the virus. In order to inoculate yourself and your society to vaccine it, you've got to protect yourself from the virus. So I listened very carefully to the president's response, and I think the response was so far mostly economic. But what I did see was this curfew from the evening until the early morning. And I think that was a way for the president, if he has to enforce a full 24-hour curfew in the future. It was a way of breaking it to us gently. I saw a lot of Kenyans got upset with this criticism that we're ill-disciplined. Yes. It seems to me that the younger people, wherever they are in the world, are less disciplined. I saw pictures of a swimming pool in South Africa. There were hundreds of people in the pool and everyone was singing Corona. Yeah. I saw the spring break from America. Sure. When you're young, you feel you'll live forever.
Yeah, and people are still out in the beach.
They are. And really this is playing Russian roulette, because this is such a virulent virus. You're already seeing there was a Corona party in America. They thought they would never get it and they got it. I mean, Prince Charles has got it. It's spreading just everywhere. Sure. And I think don't underestimate, take precautions, exercise social distancing, and do hygiene with your hands, because it makes a big difference.
Precisely, and I do agree with you. And we've got also the wife to the Canadian Prime Minister.
Correct.
Also, who traveled, of course, to the UK earlier and still got it. Most Kenyans still don't seem to come to terms with this virus, and some of them don't really believe. They think, I mean, this our Zungu thing, and the temperatures in Kenya are higher, and the science is telling us that it cannot survive under certain degrees Celsius. But then we've seen the deputy governor of Kilifi, who went abroad and came back with the disease, which also, according to the CS, he was really agitated about that also we have, top government officials who are going out of the country and don't even, have the courtesy to come back and get themselves tested or quarantine themselves. But then, Ali Khan, when we talk about this, there's something that still comes to mind. And when there was talks of a total shutdown. That's the narrative that many people were trying to juggle with in their hands. But the president comes out yesterday and gives us a partial lockdown and talks about from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. In your own take, do you think that this really can solve the issue, or are you of the school of thought, which I've seen with many people, and especially with governors, when I listen to some governors speak, many people are routing for a total shutdown, that actually could stem the spread of this disease?
The virus is not working only at nighttime. It's working 24 hours. So I think the president had two things to consider. He had to consider the fact that so many people in our economy are dependent on the daily wage. And if you have a total shutdown, it means that they're not going to have any means to survive. So my suggestion is, if you're going to do a stimulus package, you need to, if you're going to shut down, you need to make a token payment every day to every Kenyan citizen during that shutdown. And we've done this in the northern areas before, and this is the only way to put a total shutdown into effect. And I think what the president was doing was saying to himself, let me start with this, and then if I need to totally lock down, we're already halfway there. But locking down without some kind of safety net payment is not
without some kind of cushioning.
Yes, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I think that's the challenge. And really, if we're going to apply any of the money that we're requesting from the World Bank, the IMF, and others, that surely is the method we are lucky in that we have the mobile phone and we have digital ID of everybody, so it's possible to do that. And I think that's what was his concern. But if you look around the world, those countries that delayed and went to the shutdown too late ended up like Italy or America or Iran. And this is where the virus goes crazy, spreads everywhere, and then you're dealing with walking over dead bodies, I'm afraid.
Now, speaking about that, I would like to engage you in a couple of points that the president made during his address yesterday. We saw quite a number of cuts, from the CBK rates, and he spoke about lowering the CBK rates to a normal mwananchi, to someone who do not understand what these terms actually do mean. Maybe you could just try and break that down a little for us.
For the entire economy. So, so typically what he's saying is you might have a bank loan, you might have an overdraft, you might have a car loan. That cost of that loan should come down by the amount that the central bank has reduced the rate. Quite often it doesn't. That's a different matter. Sometimes banks are greedy. Sometimes they'll say we can't do it for whatever reason. But the idea is to make the cost of borrowing cheaper to the common mwananchi. That's what it's really doing. It also helps big businesses, and it helps. The idea is to help everybody. That it becomes less of a burden for you to conduct your business. He also relaxed the CRR rate.
Yes,
that is what that does is the amount of money banks have got to keep aside for their loans. So that will release money that banks can now put into the economy. I think it's about 32 billion shillings. So that was another step that they made. I think tax rates were reduced by the president pretty much across the board. Income tax ban was lifted, which should have been done anyway. VAT was reduced, amongst other things. The problem is, if you look at the economy, not only in India, but everywhere else, we're coming to a hard stop. What do I mean by that? We're going from a hyper-connected world, where we're all connected, to a world where we're stopping. I'm going to give you an example. Look at the airline business, right? Look at the airline business. What has happened? They're all grounded. Yes. Right? Yes. Whether it's Emirates, Ethiopian, they're grounded completely.
They're grounded, yeah.
So does a rate cut help you if your plane is stuck in the airport and you can't fly your passengers?
Yes.
And that's why the challenge is, these are good economic benefits, but when you're dealing with this phenomena where you're totally at a stop, what do you do?
Now, having mentioned that, there's also, the market, the Kenyan market has actually had a hard hit. And maybe if I just mentioned this earlier, when I talk about the stock markets, which I think you're very much privy to, last week you saw the NSE lost about 28 billion Kenya shillings in a day's session, which was actually an improvement if you look at the market, because the previous week, they had lost about 120 billion. That saw the suspension of the NSE 20 share index lose more than about 5% and 3% respectively in the closing of trading, with about 2,057 points. Are we likely to see this trend, in the securities market continue, and for how long until the market stabilizes again, or is it, just looking at the spread of the virus and how long it will take us to deal with the pandemic?
That final point you're making is the key point. I mean, the market wants certainty that the pandemic has been dealt with, whether it's the Nairobi Stock Exchange or the New York Stock Exchange, which also has fallen dramatically, in large part because each time that New York Stock Exchange listens to President Trump, he's not a medicine guy, and he says, oh, it's going to pass, it's a passing cloud. Then it isn't, and the market panics.
Yeah.
Here, talking about the Nairobi Stock Exchange, it has collapsed. It has fallen 25% this year. It's at levels which we last saw in 2002. It's an 18-year low. So, and quite often, whether it's Nairobi or New York or anywhere else, the market sends the clearest signal.
Yes.
So there is a signal being sent from the market, and that is it's very, very fell to a record low. I don't see either recovery until there's certainty, like you said, around the virus. And we're at the early phase. So, we haven't had a big number come up, the president come and say 100 cases, 200, which is going to happen in the next few days. And then we'll have to see how the market reacts.
And quite interesting because, when you look at the kind of economies that we're talking about, I mean, for instance, let us take the example of a country like Spain or Italy or the US and compare that with an economy like Kenya's economy. Then at the end of the day, yesterday, we ran a footage this morning of Kenyans along the Kenya-Uganda border, and they're already beginning to feel the effect of, the border closure. Most of their food stuff coming from the Ugandan side. Now they've got no food whatsoever, and they're already complaining about that. And there's something that you also mentioned earlier of the government trying to see as much as possible providing even at least something for each and every household if we are to come to a total shutdown. Do you think that that is a position that the Kenyan government, looking at the economy as we are right now, able to do if we have to get to that point?
But this is the challenge, isn't it? Because if you look at how the United Kingdom are responding, they're locking down and saying, we'll make a payment, we'll pay your salary whilst you're at home for this period. I am struggling to see whether we can actually afford it. And I think that is a further challenge for the president. I mean, we've got a railway currently, which was our biggest expenditure, which is stopping somewhere in Naivasha. That's $4 billion.
Definitely.
We are going into this crisis with a lot of debt and very little fiscal space. That's the other message I heard from yesterday's presentation. So you're completely correct. What you're talking about also is interesting. You're saying we're not getting our food at the border, the food's not coming through. It's very similar. I saw photographs of supermarkets in London. There's no food on the shelves.
The shelves are empty.
And another phenomenon of this virus has been a supply and a demand shock. And the supply shock is the lack of supply on our shelves. And we're seeing that just as much as people are seeing it in Spain or the United Kingdom or the US. In part because we're all dependent on China. And secondly, because local supply chains are now beginning to break down or be cut off. We're seeing being taken, President Museveni particularly.
Yes. Yeah, I can get you. You're breaking up a little, but
I'm sorry.
Could you just come back with that last point that you made?
So the last point I was trying to make was about supply chain disruption.
Yes.
Which is a phenomenon you're seeing all over the world. Like, if you look at international news, you'll see hundreds of people queuing outside supermarkets, empty shelves. And what we're seeing is a disruption because the global supply chain is being disrupted in the West. And you were taking the example of the Kenya-Uganda border. And we're already being disrupted because we get a lot of supplies from China. Medicine prices are very high already. Other prices have been increased. The number of ships coming to Mombasa has gone down. But you are also localizing it and saying a lot of food comes from Uganda. You're seeing also a local disruption of the supply chain. So this is both a supply side shock and a demand side shock. Demand side is because we don't have money in our pockets, the money's gone down. Look, you can cut prices, but if I can't pay for it, I can't pay for it.
You can't pay for it, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So you're getting it's very unusual in economics to get both happening at the same time. It's a very unusual phenomenon, and it's purely because of the virus.
Yeah. And something else that I was having a discussion yesterday with a friend who is also an economist, and he was talking about, Kenya being, a country that relies so much on importation of almost everything from foodstuff to other, commodities. Does this also put Kenya as an economy in a very tricky position?
No, I think it's interesting that your friend said that. I mean, foodstuffs actually, we export a lot of food, particularly vegetables, to the UK. But we are a net importing economy. We import 3 times the value of what we export. That's why, when people talk about a weak shilling, it's a very bad strategy, because you're not, you're helping 1/3 in order to not help a much bigger portion. So the point is, we're very dependent on China for our imports, and this is a phenomenon that's actually happened worldwide. If you just look at the number of flights that go from Africa to China, and look at now the disruption of the supply chain. So we are actually, you're correct, we're very dependent on imports, and at risk that if this disruption continues, that we won't be able to get the supply that we are normally used to. And then what will happen is you'll get price surges in the shops. And that's another issue for us.
Yesterday, among the measures that the president did take, he announced a cut in salaries. And I would really like to talk about that and hear your view on that. Quite interesting to me, because one would want to ask themselves, that token, or that whatever comes out of that cut, he's 80%, the deputies 80%, the cabinet secretaries, and also some top government officials in the executive. Isn't that a drop in the ocean for the economy? Or what could that token actually add onto the local, the general population at this particular time, when the country is really in dire need of, medical supply and other things as well?
I think it has an important signaling effect, what I would say. I think it shows that you understand the gravity of the situation, and that you are prepared to make a sacrifice. And I think the message is heard loud and clear. What he's actually talking about is our biggest problem, which is the cost of our government, which is huge. And in particular, the salaries that we're paying to our entire government is too big for the size of country we are. And so, in a way, what might happen here is it will be forced, the government will be forced to introduce austerity measures. And specifically, if this continues for a few weeks, the president could use it as an opportunity to try and cut the cost of the government, because typically no one makes reforms in the good times, make it in the bad times.
Well, quite interesting, and I think also I would also try to empathize with the president's move. Like you said, that's more of a gesture, and showing the Kenyans that he really does understand the situation that they are going through. Before I let you go, I'd like to engage you on another topic that still to do with the finances. The recent move by the, a deal that was struck between Safaricom and the government, and which saw a meeting between payment service providers and the central bank. And we also saw that through the mobile money, now we are able, the daily limit for mobile money transactions was increased. The mobile money wallet increased to about 300,000 Kenya shillings, up from 140,000. What does this show, and is this any good to the economy even at this ailing time?
So Safaricom had been wanting this adjustment for quite a long time. They were saying that the previous limit was arbitrarily low and penalized them. I think from a corporate perspective, this is something they've been looking for quite a while, so they'll be very happy to have got that. I think you have to go back to what we were discussing at the beginning of the show, that we're going to see much more digital-based money movement. First of all, most disease you can imagine is on the paper currency, because how many hands have passed through it?
Touching it, yeah.
Yeah. So what you're seeing is this intention for people to, and we were good. We are a digital economy, so this is the sort of thing we need to do. So I think the president was encouraging people to use M-Pesa in this time because it should lower the transmissiveness of the disease. It worked in Safaricom's favor, of course, because this is something they wanted for a long time. And then the final point is, if we are going to get to the point when we have a proper curfew 24 hours for, like South Africa, 21 days, Rwanda, 20 days, then you will need everybody to be able to access their cash on M-Pesa.
On M-Pesa, and I think also quite interestingly, the move to remove any charges for any transactions done under 1,000 bob. That also, I think, in your view, that will help a long way in helping the common mwananchi?
Absolutely, and I think also that's the key, because you've got to ask yourself, everyone's sitting at home, what is the minimum payment that you can send to people?
Yes.
And I think that is obviously below 1,000 bob, and therefore that would be a very good way of going about it. Have to give people a daily safety net payment whilst they're sitting at home, which is, I think, going to be necessary. And I was wondering how they're doing it in South Africa, which I think is already under curfew now.
Yes.
Rwanda,
yeah.
So, so maybe we could look at those situations and apply it, because I'll tell you one thing, let's be sure. 25 is really in the thousands. Therefore, this is coming. This is the point. Get prepared, I would say to people listening to the show. This is mathematics. It's multiplicative mathematics. Many people don't understand it.
Yes.
At the moment, look at the numbers in South Africa. We were like 20. Now we're 700. Yes. Tomorrow we'll be over 1,000.
1,000, yeah.
So I think this, if I was to say, take precautions, make sure you have what you need at home, and try and create an environment for yourself that you can work on.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Ali Khan Satchu, for finding time to join us here on GBS Morning Extra. I would like to engage you more going forward in the coming days as the situation continues. And I hope that you will make yourself available.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you very much. Have a good day and stay at home.
Take care.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, viewer, we have been talking to Ali Khan Satchu, the CEO of Rich Management, who graced us this morning and actually allowed us the opportunity to speak to him on the current situation in the country. And you heard for yourself. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And according to him, according to other pundits as well, a total shutdown actually is the way to go. Rwanda has gone it 30 days. South Africa has gone it 25 days, and they're already on their total shutdown. We do hope that Kenya also, if possible, we could do that, because the only way to curb this, the spread of this virus, is to keep that social distance, and is to stay away from those crowded places and surfaces that you might not know who touched. And it's more of a social thing and a social health thing than it is an economic thing. However, what Ali Khan Satchu was trying to do here this morning is just try to give us a perspective of the economic impact of the whole situation. And it's something that we cannot ignore. And quite interestingly, the move by the president, according to Ali Khan Satchu, is just testing the waters and seeing, if we go it this way, are we going, how is the response going to be? And not just how is the response going to be, it's also another way of trying to look at all the austerity measures that have been put into place to see how they're going to work and how they're going to hold up. And probably, I believe that eventually we will be forced to take that way as any other country. We saw that in Wuhan, we saw that in South Korea, we saw that in Italy right now and Spain. And India is also nearing a total shutdown, especially we saw pictures from New Delhi where, people went out for, panic shopping and all that. But then we do hope that as a country, we'll also be able to go through this pandemic. And our advice to you here from our GBS family is stay at home if you don't have anything that, you must go out, because then that's the only way of keeping the virus at bay. Well, that brings us to the end of this conversation, but you can also continue sending us your views, your suggestions or opinion using our hashtag GBS Morning Extra. You can also do that using our SMS. That's 21144. 21144 is the number. Do have yourself a lovely day. My name is Timothy Omondi. Bye-bye for now.